It's time for Veterans Issues, the show that brings you information about veterans, military, and their family. Now here's your host, Ken Rollins.
Welcome to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins here. Today's guest is me. We're going to talk about some things more in depth than we normally do on a regular show. And this show is dedicated to Captain Steve Palmer, Oxford Police Department. We'll talk more about that later. Come back. We got some stuff to talk about. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins, and we're brought to you by the Red, White, and Blue as we always are. And this week I decided to do an in-depth show that talks about the things that we hit on here periodically, and then some things that we don't get to touch on when we got a guest. So we run through about two minutes of things every week. So this week I want to cover some things that are beneficial to you as a veteran and the family. And let's talk, first thing I want to do is talk about something I get a lot of calls on, is our veterans homes. You notice you don't hear me say nursing homes because we got veterans homes, 4 of them in the state of Alabama. One of them is in Bay Minette, the William F. Green home. One is in Huntsville, the Tut Fan. And the one in Alexander City is the Bill Nichols Veterans Home. And then our latest one, our newest, is down exit 158 in Pell City, is the Colonel Robert L. Howard Veterans Home. And that's the 4 veterans homes. And now to get in one of those veterans homes, you go to your local VSO, and that's a Veterans Service Organization, a Veterans Service Office, Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs, and get an application. The doctor has to give a prescription, so to speak, of what kind of care you need, that veteran needs. If it's dementia, Alzheimer's, or some other thing, it has to be, so they know where to place you in that home. So, and then they'll come visit with you, and we have a waiting list, and the waiting list is average about 7 to 8 months. So keep that in mind when you start to get in one of the homes. You might want to start preparing for that a little bit quicker than waiting to the last minute, because it's not going to happen real fast overnight. So we have great homes. The 3 homes I mentioned, other than the one in Pell City, are 2 people to a room. The one in Pell City are private rooms, and for the veteran, it's like $16 a day at the other 3, but the one in Pell City is like $25. But if you're 70% disabled, there's no cost to you whatsoever for any of the homes. So, and even if you live in Huntsville, you may not get the Huntsville home. You may have to go to Bay Minette. It's up to you, the family. But then when another vacancy comes back up, you can move back to Huntsville. So the homes, that's the way you start it. The doctor has to prescribe long-term care for you. Or, as in Pell City, we have a domiciliary unit, which is like assisted living. You can come and go in the domiciliary there. It was the first one we've ever had in the state of Alabama. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. If you got any questions, now we're going to have my information up here like we always do on the screen. You do like everybody else does. You give me a call. I don't have any problem with people calling me because they do it all the time, and I don't have any problem with that. We'll put you in touch with the right people, hopefully. The State Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, people don't know, they get that mixed up, they get us mixed up with the federal, and there's so much difference. This is the state of Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. I serve on the State Board of Veterans Affairs as one of the board members. And the board is made up of the American Legion, VFW, DAV, Purple Hearts, Vietnam veterans, ex-prisoners of war. We've got somebody represented from every service organization that makes up the board, and we make the decisions for what happens out of that department. So if you got any questions about any of that, you be sure and get in contact with me. Now, I want to tell you this about the State Department of Veterans Affairs. It is funded through the Veterans Assistance Fund, which is a one meal tax that is split between us, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Health and Human Services, DHR, whatever. And that's the way we fund the department, pay for the VSOs, and the way we run the whole department is from the Veterans Assistance Fund. So if you hear me on here arguing sometimes with some of our legislature, sometimes they like to get in there and get a hold of our funds, because that's also the way we pay for the people who run the veterans home and our cemetery. So we have obligations for those funds, even though they might look like they're available. It's just because we had to hit them. You can go to somebody's bank account and see that they've got money, but it may be obligated that you're not aware of. So anyhow, that's what happens with us with our Veterans Assistance Fund. Y'all need to know, the audience out there needs to know how we pay for all this. We got 430,000 veterans in the state of Alabama, and I told you about all those organizations that represent the board. Think about this. 85% of Alabama veterans are not a member of any of these organizations, any of them. 15% of the veteran population in Alabama is made up by that board, but most of them just choose not to be a member of any organization. So the board represents all of the veterans as opposed to a group like American Legion or DAV or VFW or something like that. So it's an awesome thing to serve in that capacity of the State Board of Veterans Affairs, and a responsibility too, because we got to make sure that they have a home when they're in those latter twilight years, that the veteran has a great place to spend their final years on this earth. And there was, when we had the legislation, if you remember, they was trying to build the prisons off at the back of the Veterans Assistance Fund. That's what I'm talking about. The governor and all of them were trying to take the money that we have in the Veterans Assistance Fund to take care of our veterans in the homes and whatever, and use it as collateral for a loan for 33 years for a $80 million loan to be paid back. Let's see, 800 million be paid back at $50 million a year for 33 years. So that was why I was upset about the Veterans Assistance Fund under attack. Also, when you hear legislatures talking about designated funds and that kind of thing, our funds are designated. They are designated for that purpose. Veterans Assistance Fund goes to take care of the Alabama veterans. Now we have a GI Bill, which is separate but in the same, but it's not. It's fed through the Education Trust Fund and General Fund. Now, recently, this last session, prior to that, as a veteran in Alabama, if you were 20% or above disabled, your child could go to college for books and tuition free for your college. That's always been. And because of the restraints that they've cut us back, we were over obligating more people than we had funds to take care of. So the legislature, Senator Dial, introduced a bill. That has changed to 40%. So you have to be 40% disabled veteran, and you must have entered the service from the state of Alabama. And if you already own this with the 20% thing, you'll be grandfathered through that term. But no more new candidates, so to speak, for the Alabama GI Bill with just 20%. You got to be 40% or above, and that is based upon the funds they cut back on us. We can't obligate to colleges and not have the money to pay it, so that's where we were. So we've had to increase it. The bill that was passed during the last session increased it from 20 to 40%. So you'll understand that if you go in there now about your kid, you say, well, it used to be 20%. Well, it did used to be, but it's not anymore. Just a sign of the times, folks, that everything's about money. So we're gonna talk about a lot of other things right here, and I've got notes to remind me of it. So we're gonna go to a break, and we'll come back. We're gonna talk about some things I hope that you needed to hear. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. We're talking about things today that you notice I don't have a guest over here beside me. We just doing this on flying by the seat of our pants. But no, I planned this for a while. I do this a couple times a year to go in here and go into depth about things that I don't get to talk about when I've got a guest. Is things that you need to be aware of that affects you or your family. And I was just talking about the GI Bill, and that affects the veteran and the family. So I got a young girl right now that she's in for back pay for many years for her GI Bill, and her dad has passed many years ago. So the Alabama GI Bill is one of the most of the states around us are so jealous that they have tried to give Alabama addresses, even though they live in Georgia, so that they can get access to our GI Bill. So we don't allow that to happen when we know about it. But that's how good our GI Bill has been. Now I want to talk to you about something else that you may not be aware out there. Free funerals for veterans, free burial for veterans. We have two of those in the state of Alabama. One is in Montevallo. It's a federal cemetery. And then we have the first ever state cemetery located in Spanish Fort. And we've got about 1,000 plus down there that's been interned so far. And we got room to do about another 60, 70 years worth at the rate we're going. So it's a beautiful place. It's the first ever state cemetery. Free burial, free scatter guard, free everything that you'd have at any other cemetery, but it's a very honorable place. The only thing is you got to get the transportation there. Now I had a fellow on here the other day that with the Chapel Hill Funeral Home is Wayne Bishop, and that company, Dignity, he told me that if they have a veteran that don't have the transportation, they will take the veteran to Spanish Fort for free, and that they've been doing that. Maybe they didn't want me to tell you about that, but so if you've got the situation, and believe me, I've run into that more than once, where there was no arrangements made to bury the veteran, and we've had to call on our local funeral homes to help us out, and they have done so in the past, and I expect them to do it in the future. But there is free burial, so that no veteran should ever be worried about a burial place. You give me a call, I'll put you in touch with the people that takes care of that. So that's one of the other good things that we've got for the Alabama veterans. And again, the one in right south of Birmingham in Montevallo down there is for the federal. It's a federal run. Excuse me. We got the DD 214. I talk about that quite a bit. This is a one sheet of paper, and it's got it's your discharge papers. Whether it's Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, everybody got a DD 214. And that DD 214 tells everything on it that you need to know about that, how you was discharged, what ribbons you had, how long you was in the service, when you was discharged, when you entered, all of those things, that's on that one piece of paper. When the veteran passes on, that's the main thing you got to grab is that DD 214. You got to know where it is. You watching this show today or this evening or tonight, make sure that the veteran tells you or tells someone where that DD 214 is located. Because upon the death, you take this DD 214 to the cemetery, to the funeral director, and the funeral director can, if you want to, order you a military funeral. And by what's on that DD 214. And don't expect a 21 gun salute anymore. That is something that is optional. That is something that they can do if they want to. I mean, it's not a 21 gun salute, it's a volley. But you don't expect that anymore. What you might get, what they give you, and again, this is optional too, is a bugle, playing taps, folding and presenting of the flag is what you'll get on most of your military funerals. Here locally, I've got a couple of bagpipe players that will come and play if they're available. But know that, and you got to give them 48 hours. This is another thing that people are unaware of. If you're going to bury somebody on a Monday, and you've got to have at least Wednesday before the military can respond, because they have to have 48-hour notice before they can take care of that. So the DD 214, know where it is, where that if it's in a lockbox at the bank, just know where it's located, because that's the most important thing you'll have when that person passes on. And when they do, be prepared. But make a note of this. When you do, it's when a veteran passes on, it's your mind going 100 different ways. You can't remember all the things you got to do, but here's one thing I want to give you. Get at least a dozen, they say 10, but I say 12 death certificates. Get a dozen death certificates. Tell the funeral director that you want a dozen of them. And there's a lot of reasons for that. For example, if you got to cancel a credit card or you got to do something in that person's name, even if you got power of attorney, they still want a death certificate. Because think about it. You could be an ex-wife or a husband out there trying to cause pain to that person, canceling their credit card, and they're still alive. So they have to have, that's really one of the reasons you have to have those 12. And some of of your debtors require the original, and some will take a copy, but 12 won't hurt you. Just tell the funeral director that you want at least a dozen death certificates. Let me see what I want to make sure I get all this. Now, I talk to you every week about the choice card. If you're paying attention as we're speaking today, there is a bill in the legislature in Congress about the choice card. Some think it's trying to privatize the VA, and it's not. I've got a choice card in my pocket right now, and I can call Birmingham and say, I've got an eye appointment. I don't want to come to Birmingham. I don't want to drive that 60 miles to Birmingham. Here's my choice card number. I give them that number off the choice card. I would like to go local in Anniston, Oxford area if possible. They would ask me, do I have any particular one? I say yes, and I tell them the name of it. And they'll make appointments there for me if they've got to deal with the VA. So the choice card does work. And keep your eye on what's happening in Washington, D.C. because it's getting real hot right now about that particular thing I'm talking about right now is a choice card. Newly discharged veterans, if you're out there, you're just getting out, if a spouse is watching this today and your other significant other is coming home soon, you need to make sure when they get here that they enroll in the VA healthcare system. Even if there's nothing wrong with them. Down the road, 10 or 15 years from now, maybe something did happen, a knee injury, that they fell off a truck or something, and it's annotated in their file, the military 201 file. Then they don't have to back up and get started. You can go to your VA, and you get disability from that, and you get treatment for it. So make sure that one of the things they do after they get out of the service is enroll in that. And then the last thing I want to tell you about is what we talked about here last week, pre-arranged funerals. I know we don't like to talk about that, but the best thing you can do for your family is show your love, is to make sure that you have your funeral arrangements in order when you pass, so that they don't have to scramble around and try to find something for you. And that'll be the best gift you'll ever give them. So we got a show wrapping up here right now, and I appreciate all of you tuning in this week on what's that. And let me see. We're gonna come back with news you can use, but I want to appreciate all of you listening to all this, because we got some things I want to do at the end of the show. We'll be right back after this with news you can use and some other stuff. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. I appreciate you tuning in this week, as I always do every week. Here's where the pen comes in handy. I want you to write this number down and have it ready. If not for you, maybe somebody you know would need it. It's a VA hotline where you get all the questions answered. It's 855-948-2311. 855-948-2311. That's a new number that's been installed in the White House just for this purpose. And it's also if you know somebody that's having suicidal problems there. Now, I want to remind you about the Alabama Wounded Warriors that Ross Winter was on here a while back. We talked about. They help a lot of people. You don't have to be a wounded warrior to get this help, but go to Wounded Warriors Alabama, all one word, Wounded Warriors Alabama at gmail.com, 256-458-2715. I want to remind you about the law enforcement tag, too. We need you to think about that if you're getting a new tag for your car. You don't have to be in law enforcement to get that tag, but it does say something about you as the operator of that vehicle, because that shield and that rose on there says that you support the families of those who lost someone in the line of duty in law enforcement. So think about that. I want the control room, if they would, to bring up some pictures I sent in this week that I want to talk to you about. This fellow right here, that's Captain Steve Palmer. This past Saturday, we lost Captain Palmer. And it seems like when people pass, we always got these good things to say about them. This was a dear friend. He's a dear friend to thousands and thousands of people in the city of Oxford and beyond. Look at this collage. This is I've seen so much, and I've been heartbroken for days over this. This is very few people passing affected me as much as this did with Captain Palmer, because you'd had to know the guy. If the control room bring up this one picture, the last memory I have, okay, we don't have that one, but it's a picture of me sitting where I'm sitting right now and looking back in the back of the studio and seeing Steve sitting there while Chief Partridge was doing the show. And Captain Palmer had dozed off because, as said the chief, we must be real boring, but he's sitting, I can see that I'm looking at the chair right now that he was sitting in this studio, and he's a funny guy, but he was a hard-working guy. I mean, he did. I got pictures of when we were putting up the law enforcement memorial. It took a lot of strong backs to hold them panels in place, and the first one in line was Steve Palmer. When it come time, a couple times a year, Chief Partridge goes up to Centennial Park and washes those memorials up there. One guy that was always with him, Steve Palmer, got on his old work clothes, washing those walls of the memorial, making them shine, and very proud of what he did. He's a good man. And Oxford has lost a lot. The law enforcement has lost a lot. And I've lost a dear friend. And all of those people out there at Hurton, as this show airs, he will already have been buried. So I won't give you the date and time on that, but we've lost a good one. And this week, this whole show, I wanted the family of Steve to know how much I particularly love that and respect that man. So this week, well, let's see. I don't know how much time I got. But anyhow, I don't have a lot, but I just wanted to take that time to make sure that everybody out there knows that Oxford's hurting. We've lost a good one. This salute goes out to the family of Steve Palmer. We're gone.